All right, let's go. Number 10. Roman concrete, the material that gets stronger underwater. In 1817, French engineer Louis Vicat published the first modern analysis of Roman concrete, the material used to build the Pantheon, the Colosseum, the harbor at Caesarea. Vicat was trying to understand how Roman concrete had survived intact for 2,000 years, while modern Portland cement begins deteriorating within decades. He didn't find the answer. Neither did the next 150 years of materials science. The specific mystery was not just durability on land. It was what happened to Roman concrete underwater. Structures built in seawater were not merely surviving saltwater exposure. They were getting stronger, denser, more structurally sound after 2,000 years of immersion than when first poured. In 2017, a team led by Marie Jackson at UC Berkeley finally explained the mechanism. Roman concrete used volcanic ash from near Pozzuoli combined with seawater and lime. Exposure to seawater over time produced a rare mineral called tobermerite, which grew as crystalline structures inside the concrete and reinforced it from within. But here is where the full weight of this becomes clear. The Romans discovered this formula 2,000 years ago. Modern Portland cement, the foundation of virtually all contemporary construction, cannot replicate this self-reinforcing property. It degrades, it cracks, it fails. The Pantheon's dome has been standing for 1,897 years without structural compromise. Modern concrete domes require reinforcement the Romans did not use. We know what they did. We have chosen not to do it because Portland cement is cheaper to produce at scale. The dome is still standing. Number 9. Damascus steel, the lost formula with carbon nanotubes inside it. Between the 3rd and 17th centuries CE, bladesmiths in the Islamic world produced swords from Wootz steel, worked into what Europe called Damascus steel. The blades had a distinctive flowing surface pattern and a combination of properties modern metallurgy considers mutually exclusive: extreme hardness and extreme flexibility simultaneously. A Damascus steel blade could be bent significantly without breaking. It held an edge that contemporary accounts described as capable of splitting a silk scarf dropped onto it. European swords were either hard and brittle or flexible and soft. Damascus steel was somehow both. Production stopped in the early 18th century. The specific ore sources dried up. The techniques were not written down in recoverable form. The last master bladesmiths died without transmitting the complete knowledge. But here's where this becomes a genuine mystery that persists today. In 2006, a team led by Peter Poffler at the Technical University of Dresden analyzed a Damascus blade using electron microscopy and discovered carbon nanotubes, structures not theoretically described until the 20th century and not deliberately produced until the 1990s, embedded in the steel matrix. The specific high-temperature carbon manipulation process that medieval bladesmiths used had produced nanostructures that are now a frontier technology in modern material science. Multiple research groups have attempted to replicate Damascus steel production. None have fully succeeded. The blades are in museums. Their properties are measured and documented. The process that produced those properties died in the 18th century and has not been recovered. Number 8. Greek fire, the weapon whose recipe burned with the empire. In 678 CE, the Arab fleet besieging Constantinople encountered something no naval force had faced before. The Byzantines deployed a substance through bronze siphons that produced flames burning on the surface of water, could not be extinguished by water, and adhered to wood, cloth, and human flesh with catastrophic efficiency. The Arab fleet was destroyed. Constantinople survived for another 8 centuries. Greek fire, a state secret of the Byzantine Empire, known in full to only a small number of people at any given time. The Byzantine Empire fell in 1453. The specific formula fell with it. But here is where the silence becomes remarkable. We have extensive accounts of its properties. It burned on water. Water intensified it. Sand, urine, and vinegar were the only effective countermeasures. It was projected as a liquid stream. It had a distinctive sound described as thunder. Every property is documented. The formula is not. Quicklime explains heat on water contact, but not sustained burning. Naphtha explains liquid projection, but not water intensification. Calcium phosphide explains spontaneous ignition on water contact, but has handling properties that make 7th century deployment impractical. No proposed formula satisfies all documented properties simultaneously. The combination of substances that burned on water and destroyed Arab naval power for 3 centuries is one of history's most consequential trade secrets. It died with the civilization that kept it. Number 7. The Antikythera Mechanism, the ancient computer whose full function we decoded in 2021. In 1901, sponge divers off the Greek island of Antikythera recovered fragments of a corroded bronze device from a Roman-era shipwreck dated to approximately 70 to 60 BCE. When archaeologist Valerio Stias examined them in 1902, he noticed gears, a system of interlocking bronze gears of extraordinary precision that should not have existed in the ancient world. The Antikythera mechanism was an analog computer, hand-cranked, that tracked the movements of the sun and moon, predicted solar and lunar eclipses, tracked the 4-year Olympic cycle, and displayed the positions of the 5 known planets. The gear train contains at least 37 gears, some with teeth so fine they required manufacturing precision not matched in European clockmaking until the 14th century CE, 1,400 years after the mechanism was built. But here is where the full strangeness becomes apparent. In 2021, a team from University College London published a new reconstruction revealing that the front display was even more sophisticated than previously understood. A complex cosmological display coordinating all 5 planets with lunar and solar cycles simultaneously. There is no developmental sequence in the archaeological record, no series of simpler devices that led to this level of sophistication. It appears essentially fully formed on a single ship that sank off a small Greek island, apparently on its way somewhere unknown. Who made it is unknown. Where it was made is unknown. Whether other copies existed is unknown. It is in the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. The most sophisticated object from the ancient world, whose full function took 2,000 years to decode, whose maker left no other documented traces. Number 6. The Nazca Lines. Geometric precision we couldn't match until GPS. The Nazca Lines of southern Peru, geoglyphs etched into the desert between 500 BCE and 500 CE, were first observed from the air in 1927. The scale was not apparent until aerial surveys in the 1940s. Hundreds of figures, 50 to 300 meters in length, covering 450 square kilometers. The lines are remarkably straight. Surveying measurements have confirmed that the longest straight lines deviate from perfect linearity by less than 0.1% over distances of up to 8 kilometers. Modern surveying achieves comparable straightness with laser theodolites and GPS. The Nazca achieved it with wooden stakes and rope, and whatever additional methodology they used, which has not been recovered. But here is where the engineering mystery resists dismissal. In 2018, drone surveys and LiDAR imaging identified over 140 new geoglyphs not previously documented. The survey is ongoing. The consistent finding across all analyzed figures is the same. Geometric precision not achieved by any European culture until precision surveying instruments were introduced in the 18th century. The Nazca left no decoded writing, no accounts of how the lines were planned, surveyed, or executed. The hyper-arid pampa preserved their marks for 2,000 years. The marks are still there. The technique that produced them is not documented anywhere. Number 5. Sacsayhuaman. The walls that survived every earthquake, ours didn't. The fortress temple of Sacsayhuaman above Cuzco in Peru used limestone and andesite blocks weighing up to 200 tons, transported from quarries 15 to 35 kilometers away without wheeled vehicles, metal tools, or large draft animals. The logistical challenge is extraordinary, but the most significant engineering achievement at the site is not the transport. It is the jointing. The blocks are fitted together without mortar in a polygonal interlocking pattern, where each surface has been shaped to fit its neighbors, with tolerances measured in fractions of a millimeter. A sheet of paper cannot be inserted between adjacent blocks in many sections, but here is where the seismic engineering becomes the story. Peru is one of the most seismically active regions on Earth. Spanish colonial buildings in Cuzco, using standard European masonry, have repeatedly collapsed in earthquakes. The walls of Sacsayhuaman have not. The polygonal interlocking system allows the massive blocks to flex slightly during seismic events and resettle into their original positions. Earthquake resistance that European building practice did not achieve until the 20th century. The Spanish dismantled approximately 2/3 of Sacsayhuaman to use the stones for colonial construction. That 2/3 collapsed in the 1950 Cuzco earthquake. The third that remains is Inca construction. It is still standing. The engineering that survived is theirs. The engineering that failed is ours. Number 4. The Baghdad Battery, the clay jars that produce measurable current from 250 BCE. In 1938, Wilhelm Koenig, director of the National Museum of Iraq, identified a group of ceramic jars dated to approximately 250 BCE with a specific internal structure, an iron rod inserted through an asphalt stopper surrounded inside the jar by a copper cylinder. Koenig recognized the assembly as structurally identical to a galvanic cell, a battery. In 1978, Arne Eggebrecht constructed a replica using grape juice as electrolyte and measured the output, 0.87 volts, sufficient to electroplate a thin layer of metal onto a surface. But here is where the problem deepens rather than resolves. We have the jars. We have confirmed they produce electric current. We have no contemporary written record from any culture describing the production or use of electric current in the ancient world. We have no other artifacts identifiable as components of an electrical system. We have no plated objects from the period confirmed as electroplated rather than fire-gilded. What we have is a functional battery design from 250 BCE with no documented context. Either it was a battery used for purposes we cannot identify, or it was something else whose electrochemical properties were not understood by the people who made it. The evidence does not allow a definitive choice. Number 3. Coral Castle. One man, 1,100 tons, an undocumented method. Between 1923 and 1951, an eccentric Latvian immigrant named Edward Leedskalnin, working alone, at night, in Homestead, Florida, moved and shaped approximately 1,100 tons of coral rock into a structure he called Rock Gate Park. Individual stones range up to 30 tons. The tallest obelisk weighs 28 tons. The walls are cut and fitted with precision comparable to ancient megalithic structures. Nobody documented his method. Neighbors reported hearing no machinery. Multiple observers who attempted to watch him work found he stopped when anyone was present. When asked how he moved the stones, Leedskalnin reportedly said he had discovered the secrets of how the pyramids were built. He died in 1951. The method died with him. But here is where this becomes more than eccentric biography. In 2005, a maintenance team found the 9-ton rotating gate, balanced so precisely it turns with a single finger's pressure, had fallen out of alignment and needed reseating. The process required a crane and several engineers working for an extended period to restore the balance that one man had achieved alone, at night, with tools that were not documented. The castle is in Homestead, Florida. It is open to visitors. The gate still rotates with a finger's pressure. The method that produced it is unknown. Number 2. The Dendera Reliefs. The images that look exactly like a working lamp. In the Temple of Dendera in Upper Egypt, in a series of crypts beneath the main structure, stone reliefs have generated sustained controversy since electrical engineer Walter Garn analyzed them in the 1970s. The reliefs show figures that, when viewed without prior archaeological context, appear to depict a large glass envelope, a filament-like element inside it, a cable connecting it to a box at its base, and a figure interacting with the assembly in a manner consistent with operation. Garn and subsequent researchers, including Reinhard Habeck and Georg Helling, proposed the reliefs could be interpreted as depicting a primitive electric lamp, specifically a configuration resembling a Crookes tube, the precursor to both the incandescent light bulb and the cathode ray tube. The mainstream Egyptological interpretation is that the reliefs depict a lotus flower from which a serpent emerges, a standard Egyptian mythological image with extensive parallels in other temples. But here is where the dispute becomes genuinely interesting. Both interpretations can be applied to the same image simultaneously. The reliefs are not ambiguously preserved. They are specific and detailed. The question is whether the specificity corresponds to a mythological image or to a technical device that the mythological imagery encodes or overlays. The evidence currently available is insufficient to force a choice. The Temple of Dendera is in Upper Egypt and is open to visitors. The images are there to be seen. The debate is ongoing. Number 1. Flexible glass, the Roman invention that an emperor had executed. In the 1st century CE, two Roman writers, Petronius in the Satyricon and Pliny the Elder in Natural History, recorded the same story. A craftsman came before Emperor Tiberius with a glass cup. He demonstrated its flexibility by throwing it on the floor, where it dented rather than shattered. He produced a small hammer and worked the dent back out. The cup was unbroken. Tiberius asked whether anyone else knew the formula. The craftsman said no, only he knew it. Tiberius had him executed. The reason, according to both sources, if unbreakable glass became available, it would devalue gold and silver and destabilize the Roman economy. This story has been dismissed as legend for most of modern history. But here is where the dismissal becomes complicated. In 2012, researchers at MIT announced the development of a metallic glass alloy that bent rather than shattered under stress. The field of flexible glass is now an active area of material science research, with applications in foldable displays and flexible electronics. The material property the Roman legend describes, glass that bends rather than shatters, is real, achievable, and currently being developed as a frontier technology. Tiberius, if the legend is accurate, looked at the future of material science and had it executed to protect the price of silver. The craftsman's name is not recorded. The formula died with him. Modern researchers are reconstructing it without knowing the original existed. 10 engineering achievements. 10 things built, discovered, or formulated by people who did not have what we consider the prerequisite knowledge, and in several cases, achieved results we have not fully matched. Roman concrete that gets stronger in seawater. A steel formula producing carbon nanotubes before nanotubes were theoretically described. A naval weapon whose formula died with its empire. An analog computer 1,400 years ahead of European clockmaking. Survey precision achieved without GPS across 8 kilometers of desert. Earthquake-resistant construction that outlasted every building we placed beside it. A possible battery from 250 BCE with no documented context. A 1,100-ton structure built by one man at night with an undocumented method. Reliefs readable as electrical devices or as mythology. And a formula for flexible glass that an emperor had executed to protect the silver market. The pattern across all 10 is the same. In each case, the achievement exists. It is physically present, measurable, documentable. What is absent is the knowledge of how it was achieved. The process died before we knew to record it. The craftsman was executed. The empire fell. The last practitioner died without a student. This is not primitive ancestors achieving things by accident. This is deliberate, sophisticated technical knowledge that was not adequately transmitted. We can identify, in most cases, the specific moment of loss, the specific event that severed the chain. The knowledge was there. The transmission failed. The Pantheon Dome is still standing. The Damascus blades are still in the museums. The Antikythera Mechanism is still in Athens. The walls of Sacsayhuaman are still above Cusco. The Coral Gate in Homestead, Florida, still rotates with a finger's pressure. They built better than we remembered to learn from them. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.